The verdict of obedience of the Sharia court against a disobedient wife. This is a love story written in English and translated into Arabic by the author Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. All characters in this book are fictitious, and any resemblance to real people, living or dead, is purely coincidental. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in the tribal system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief paragraphs in a review to be printed in a newspaper, journal, or a school or university magazine. This is a love story about three Muslim girls who were subjected to gross injustice, severe violence, and abhorrent persecution by Muslim men, religious leaders and imams, Sharia judges, and police officers in the Islamic community and the religion of Islam and its hostile, hateful, and abusive teachings against women's rights, which are uncountable. For example, beating of women, child marriage, circumcisions of private parts of Muslim girls, which is known universally as female genital mutilation, or FGM, slaying them in honor killings, inequality between males and females in inheritance, testimony in court, marriage, divorce, men's guardianship over women, controlling their lives and destinies as if they are minors, physically handicapped, or mentally retarded, and forcing them to wear the ibaya, veil, hijab, niqab, or the humiliating black burqa as if they are frightening ghosts. Muslim men are allowed by the Quran to have sex, or rather rape, without the need for marriage. Captive women of war, such as wives, daughters, sisters, and even mothers of the defeated enemies, who are called unclean infidels. Islam forbids a Muslim woman to become a president of a country, or a post at work, or a judge in court. And she is strictly forbidden to lead men or women in prayer as an imama. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad said the woman is an unclean creature, just like a dog and a donkey, and therefore as a defiled being, she annuls a man's prayer if she passes in front of him while he is praying. Many Islamic countries refrain women from going to school and work, and they are not permitted to drive cars or motorbikes or bicycles. They are forbidden to practice any kind of sports, such as soccer, volleyball, basketball, and they are not allowed to go to gymnastics, beaches or swimming pools, cinemas or theaters, and none of them is allowed to leave the house without her husband or with a muhram man, the woman forbidden to marry, such as her father or a brother. They are also not allowed to fall in love with men before marriage or choose their future life partners. This is a story about three innocent girls, namely Intisar, Firdaus, and Mura. Chapter 51. The latest manifestation of the fairy Al-Jinniya, the beautiful pride of the Nile. The so-called disobedient, homeless, and fugitive Muslim wife, the third innocent girl Intisar, stood at a distance from the house of her second rapist, Major Sanosni, not knowing where to go in such early hours of the morning. The new day is still as dark as the previous midnight. Her raped and abusive body is in pain from the top of her head to the bottom of her feet. Her heart bleeds from the traumatic experience of a second attempt rape by the major. She still remembers the painful fairy's rape attempt by the fat human beast Bulbul wa Dalballa, the son of the prophet's neighbor, in the portal of the evil beam lady Nafisa. Her hair is frizzy and her face is falling due to the painful slaps she received from the cruel wife, Mrs. Al-Sanosni, before expelling her from her residence, which is subjected to armed guards and voracious dogs. It is 4 o'clock in the morning, as her watch showed, and it is still dark and cold. Intisar looked all around her. She saw the Nile River, not far from her. She saw the residence of the rich extended along the river bank. She knows what will happen to her if she knocks on the door of any house at that time. She would be accused of being a homeless street prostitute or a burglar girl or would be mistaken for a demonic incarnation of some sort and shot and killed. Intisar decides to go to the river instead. Her experience of the few nights she spent on the streets of Khartoum city had taught her that the wilderness of savage animals and poisonous insects and cemeteries of the dead zombies and ghosts are less dangerous than human dwellings. At least the earlier creatures would not rape, abuse, and enslave her, while the later creatures had beaten, raped, deceived, and enslaved her, and tried to stone her to death, and turn her into a whore and a slave girl, bid for adultery and slavery at a cheap price. They also looted her bag, stole her money and shoes, expelled her outside her city, deprived her of her shelter, food, her family, her freedom, and love, and separated her from her lover and imprisoned him as a criminal. Therefore, Intisar preferred to go to the river and find a solution to her intractable problem than to seek help from her selfish and dangerous fellow humans. Once again, the runaway wife discovered that her feet had no shoes. She walked aimlessly and barefoot for some time on the muddy river bank with cold and dirty mud until she came across some fishermen's boats. She looked around but didn't see any creature near her. The strong tide of the waves created a very cold breeze that made her shiver and freeze. Her teeth and body were frozen as a result of the cold weather. Her teeth chattered loudly over and over again. She is tired, exhausted, and her mind is confused. She is starving to death. She tried to figure out what to do, but her mind seemed to have stopped working like a human being. Her bitter experience deprived her of any human power of reasoning and made her like a two-legged animal. Worse than that, her present situation can be likened to a lifeless vegetable. Despite her miserable condition, the animal's survival instinct forced her to enter a boat and hide from the cold. Intisar found an old blanket inside that boat. The blanket was torn and full of holes and gave off a stench of bungant fishy smell. The homeless girl crept under the blanket and covered her frozen body from the freezing cold. She gathered her cold body into one part of the blanket that had fewer holes. The fugitive wife Intisar now used to sleep anywhere, under a big cairn in an apartment building, over a grave inside a spooky cemetery, in a filthy warehouse full of rats and vampire bugs, now in a smelly fisherman's boat in the river Nile, in the Nile River. Her fellow human beasts had raised any instinct of fear from her heart. They turned her into a completely helpless, homeless animal like a female. And that smelly boat happened to be one of the famous fishermen's boats. It is owned by the most famous fisherman in the triangle capital city of Sudan, and his name is Haj Mustafa Wad al-Bashir. He's an old man in his late 70s. That man is the owner of the boat in which the homeless girl Intisar resorted to spending her sad night of homelessness in the streets of Khartoum city. He's an aged man, as old as the Nile River itself. He spent all his childhood, youth, manhood, and old age in the river fishing. He always boasts that he caught more fish than the 45 million people of Sudan. Therefore, he claims he knows the river inside and out. Everything people want to know about river fishing, fish species, boat maintenance, net making and repair, weather, fishing and swimming in the Blue Nile, White Nile, and Nile River. He's the right authority to go to. Besides, he has many legends, myths, and fables and strange stories about the river to tell his listeners. He claimed to have killed two large crocodiles, a hippopotamus, and a huge fire-breathing dragon. He also claimed to have seen many ghost ships, strange lights, and many more wonders in the river at night. Moreover, he swore by God Almighty, the noble Quran, and his beloved Prophet Muhammad that he hear many voices of space alien creatures, angelic voices, and other creatures of the Nile River. For example, he heard the singing of females at the wedding of jinn with humans, the voices of heavenly angels, the crying of demons, the scream of male ghosts, and the quarrels of the virgins of heaven or paradise. That is why his relatives, friends, foes, and other fishermen call him the son of the Nile. However, only wondrous miracle that the son of the Nile had not witnessed so far is the vision of the fairy, the beautiful bride of the Nile, Al-Jinniya. Many hunters of fish claim to have seen her and describe her remarkable beauty. Those who make such allegations are less than Haj Mustafa in age, experience, and knowledge in fishing, swimming, and sailing on the river, especially the fisherman Haj Harun, who is 5 years younger than Haj Mustafa in age and 10 years less in experience than him. The fisherman Haj Harun claimed that he had many encounters and adventures with the beautiful fairy, bride of the Nile. Just a month ago, Haj Mustafa was present at a social gathering of an old man who married an underage girl as his wife. Number 3, when Haj Harun described the magnificent beauty of the bride of the Nile, the narrator spent many hours describing her unmatchable beauty and sexy body. Once he finished his story, his description became a thrilling fairy tale told in every house, street, nook, cranny, brothel, bar, a mosque, school, club, and sports ground fill in the capital city. As a result, the fame and greatness of the name of Haj Harun is increasing day by day. The thing that aroused anxiety in Haj Mustafa's heart was that he might lose his honorable title, Ibn Nil, or as the son of the Nile, if he did not have such an encounter with the beautiful, legendary bride of the Nile. So he began praying to God Almighty and his noble messenger Muhammad to grant him success in fulfilling the desire of his heart before his old age took him away and he departed to the afterlife upon his death. He also asked all his 4 wives, sons, daughters, grandchildren, relatives, friends, and good neighbors to remember him in their 5 daily prayers and during their fasting in the holy months of Ramadan to ask God Almighty and His holy prophet Muhammad to fulfill the satisfaction of his heart before leaving the land of the living and descending into the land of the dead to his eternal rest. On that very day, Haj Mustafa and his four sons came to the river at 5 o'clock in the morning. They were 1 hour late than their usual time. The delay in their arrival was caused by the Noba they attended on Saturday night. It is a type of religious dance where the participants shake and dance together holding hands while constantly chanting in unison the name of God Almighty. Alive, alive for a God, God, Allah, Allah. It is usually celebrated in honor of a child born into a family, the circumcision of 5-year-old boy or a female genital mutilation of a young girl. Haj Mustafa and his four sons spent many hours dancing in the Noba celebration and finally enjoyed a delicious meal. As a result, they went to bed in the middle of the night. Early Sunday morning, Haj Mustafa had great difficulty walking his four sons. Then the four brothers and their old father spent 5 minutes in their morning prayers and rushed to the river. The four sons are not inferior to their father in the art of hunting fish. They were also born fishermen. They inherited the profession of fishing from their father, who inherited from his father, who got it from their great grandfather, and so forth. Following the example of his father, Haj Mustafa named his four sons after the Prophet Muhammad. May God bless him and grant him peace. Starting from the oldest to the youngest, they are named respectfully Taha, Yasin, Mahmud, and Ahmed. The late grandfather named himself Al-Bashir after one of the names of the founder of Islam. On Sunday morning, Haj Mustafa with Al-Bashir and his four sons presented themselves to the river to start another day of fishing. Since they were born and started in the art of fishing, they have always smelled and reeked of the pungent and strong scent of fish. That stench clings to their bodies and clothes even if they are far from the river and it is fish. There is no soap or a detergent in the entire valley that can rid them of that nasty pungent odor. However, they do not smell that stench in themselves, but anyone who meets them can smell it on them from a mile away. The closer they got to the river and their boat, the more intense the smell. So once that smell reaches their noses, it revives their inherited profession, wherefore each one of them automatically went about his business. The elder son went around the boat checking for holes or damage. The second son examined the fish beds, and the third son examined the big net. At last, the youngest son checked the paddles. The father sat down at the end of the boat and took off snuff and threw it into his big, toothless mouth. From his tower, the father watches his four sons. He's shouting as he commands and corrects his sons can scare away all of the river's creatures, including fish and crocodiles. So another day of hunting fish has just begun. In a short time, the boat began to move away from the riverbank. Haj Mustafa, whose main task is to speak and shout more than to work, is still sitting on his tower at one end of the boat, holding his big stick and his prayer rosary as he glorifies God and shouts his commands to his children. Two of his sons drive the boat. The two older and younger boys sit on the other end of the boat and await their second task of casting and stretching the fishing net. The boat sails quickly, leaving the river bank behind. They could only hear a few faint voices of tame and fluffy animals far away on both banks, like donkeys, camels, cows, horses, dogs, and chickens. When the boat reached the middle between the two banks, the son of the Nile gave his last command to his two sons to cut their net, and his voice fell silent. Everything seems like every day, a routine for Haj Mustafa and his four sons. Their work on the Nile has become so routine that they can predict everything from the flight of birds over their heads to the number of fish under their boat. So everything is part of their daily lives and nothing new captures their curiosity. They know when they can eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner without looking at their wrist watches. 6 days a week, they do the same routine except on Friday, when they take the day off. On Fridays, they go to the biggest mosque in Khartoum city, which is called Al Nilain Masjid, for public prayer, and spend the rest of the holiday either at home or visiting their relatives or friends. When Haj Mustafa was satisfied with the performance of his sons, he decided to take his nap. Usually, the siesta is between breakfast and lunch, but that day, because of the religious dance called Anoba the night before, the Hajj felt very sleepy and went down to take a nap. Without looking at the old blanket, he reached out his right hand and pulled it. Since he bought it many years ago, the blanket did not resist its owner until that day. Haj Mustafa looked at it and tried again with both hands. Although he had made small progress, the blanket had not yet yielded to him. Then the son of the Nile rebuked the accursed Satan, the devil, and tried for the third time with all his might. Unfortunately, this time Haj Mustafa fell on his back due to the strong pull that caused the blanket to be torn in two. Before he could stand on his feet, he saw with his own eyes what made every hair on his body stand up. He is old and bald, and there is not a single hair on his big head, which is a square type head. However, the rest of his body is full of hair as if he is a human who became a werewolf. Then the blanket stood up like a living thing. The standing blanket had become a human figure. The human form manifested itself as a beautiful girl. The young, beautiful fairy became the bride of the Nile. This is how Haj Mustafa interpreted his fairy's vision of the legendary bride of the Nile, Al Jinniya. Her face shines like the sun. Her eyes are large, and at the end of the two corners are black and narrow eyelashes. One eye is green and the other eye is pink, like the white, skinny daughter of European Christian infidels. Her long blonde hair reached down to her feet. Her apple-colored cheeks reflected the sun's rays like bright gold. When she smiled, her teeth become whiter, like milk. Her neck is as long as a bottle of a ghee. Her breasts are like two large pomegranates, and her rosy cheeks are like two fresh apples. Her sweet lips are like two pieces of fresh pineapple. Her eyebrows are black and semicircular like new crescents. Her waist is very narrow. Her legs are even, bright, and shine like gold. Her buttocks are large and slightly bushed up. Her nose is straight. She is like the nose of the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. She also resembles in her marvelous beauty the queen of the king Nimrod, Semiramis, which is known also the fish queen. She's adorned in a beautiful, sparkly white dress. Her beautiful dress held onto her body, which clearly revealed her inner charm figure. Her transparent white dress reveals her pink, small underwear and para. From the top of her head to the bottom of her feet, she looks like an Indian heroine in a hit Bollywood movie. And she is white, like a Russian girl. There is a beautiful small round black mole on her left cheek. When she smiles, her face reveals a beautiful dimple on her right cheek. Sometimes she smiles and other times she laughs. She is adorned with gold and diamonds from the top of her head to the toes of her feet. She wears a gold watch on her right wrist and a white ring on her left hand. Her ring is small of her ring is made of ivory. She has another gold earring on her left nose. Her nose jewel is larger than the ring on her finger. Her neck is decorated with a long chain of pure gold. The chain reaches her navel. The chain carries a golden crescent at its end. Inside the crescent is the star of King David. She has another large golden necklace around her beautiful neck. She has many bangles on her feet, bracelets on her legs, earrings on her ears, anklets around her ankles. They are all made of pure gold. Around her head is a golden tiara, and on her neck a wreath of pure gold. On her head, she also wears a big crown of gold. When she speaks, her voice is as soft as music. It is as sweet as a cuckoo bird or a nightingale. When she sings, her songs are similar to those of the legendary Indian singer Lata. She dances as an Indian heroine dances in Hollywood, in Bollywood movies. In short, Ibn Nil, or the son of the Nile River, spent hours and hours describing his fairest vision of the latest manifestation of the legendary beautiful bride of the Nile, Al Jinniya. This is how Haj Mustafa later described the fairy queen of the water, who is like the fishbone girl who became Queen Semiramis to his relatives and friends. The only thing he couldn't describe was her shoes. He swore by God and his infallible messenger Muhammad, and by divorcing his four wives, that she was barefoot. Yet this is the only thing his opponents hold against him. Haj Harun is the fairest competitor to object to Haj Mustafa's description of the beautiful fairy bride of the Nile. He always mentioned the shoes of the legendary beautiful bride in his description. He often claimed that whenever Al Jinniya appeared to him, he saw her shoes, sometimes made of skinny glass, shiny glass, and at the other times pure gold. Despite this big claim and the long description of the fairy queen Al Jinniya, the bride of the Nile, that particular morning, Ibn Nil did not act or react normally, as he later told his relatives, friends, and enemies. When the blanket stood up and transformed into a beautiful girl, and the supposed bride of the Nile appeared before him with bones and flesh, the old man cried out loudly, Al Jinniya, Al Jinniya, or the fairy queen of the river Nile, the fairy bride of the river. His loud cries terrified every living being in the river, especially his four sons. As he later falsely claimed, the frightened Haj Mustafa could not stand on his feet. He kept falling on the boat and went on shouting like a fair alarm over and over the name of the beautiful bride of the Nile. He was even more afraid of the two than of the two teenage girls who saw Intisar sleeping on the grave of her late sister Firdos and mistook her for a resurrected female zombie or al-Ba'atiyah. The fairest two boys to respond to their father's fear were the ones driving the boat. These two sons did not see the girl standing before their naked eyes as a beautiful fairy queen of the Nile, but rather as a kind of demonic female incarnation of a sort. Her sudden appearance before their eyes in her disheveled hair, her teared eyes, and her tied, short, dirty dress revealed to them a demonic female creature who had come to destroy them all. They both let go of the bridles and jumped into the waters of the river. The youngest and the eldest sons also see the girl as an evil female creature that has manifested herself and is about to harm them. Their suspicions were confirmed when they saw her standing without shoes. They also dived into the water and swam to the shore. This was how the four frightened sons escaped and were left behind in their boat, the old father alone to face the devil's evil wife. Therefore, the, Father Haj Mustafa was left alone with the fairy, the beautiful bride of the river Nile River. According to his story, which he later told his friends and foes, which keeps changing and increasing and developing its events. He sat on his boat and had a heart-to-heart talk with her. It was a long, peaceful, face-to-face conversation with the beautiful fairy girl, the bride of the Nile. And he claimed that she sang and danced for him. Whatever his fairy tale was, the truth was not like that. When the homeless and runaway girl Intisar got up from her sleep and saw Haj Mustafa and his four sons, she became very frightened. She started trembling with fear, dread, and panic. When she saw the reaction of the four sons who were afraid of her and jumped into the water, she was afraid that their father would hold her accountable for their fears and droning and try to kill her. To avoid being slain in another honor killing like the one she had faced at the gate of the military base, the fugitive wife fell to her knees and began to ask for forgiveness and mercy. But in that, the hated and oppressed girl who was horribly abused was wrong because Haj Mustafa also fell on his face and fainted due to the great terror that filled his heart at her sudden appearance before his own eyes. His heart lost a few beats and his mind stopped working for a few seconds. His whole body was paralyzed. When his departed soul somehow returned to his decrepit body and revived him to life, he began to sweat, shiver, and shake like a 90-year-old Asian man. Then his loud cries for help began. The frightened man might have cried out with his lungs to death if the fairy queen of the Nile had not fallen to her knees and begged him for mercy as well. And at that difficult time, he needed her mercy more than she wanted it from him. The bride of the Nile's sudden move towards him caused the frightened old geezer to fall on his stomach and face. He passed out and became like the lifeless carcass of a crocodile or a decrepit old man transformed into a dead corpse, ready for his funeral and burial. Chapter 42. Divine Bells Ring in Heaven. The alleged disobedient Muslim wife Intisar concluded that the old sheikh had died out of fear of her, and his four sons drowned in the water and died as well. This realization made her feel incredibly guilty, deeply saddened, heartbroken, and troubled in her consciousness. She looked around and saw the boat running fast toward the bank, driven by the force of the current. Her mind is still clouded by the bitter experience of rape she had at the home of the lustful military major. She tried to find a way to escape from their circumstances, but she could not. Intisar remembered the Imam's prophetic words. You run away from one man and you want to be the woman of many men? She understood from her bitter experience of 3 days in Khartoum city that his words were like an inescapable satanic prophecy and that her kismet or a destiny in life was destined her to fulfill it. If she is to continue living in this cosmopolitan city of Sudan, she will sooner or later be forced into adultery, slavery, or prostitution. The only alternative is to return to the city of Gadarif and submit to her alleged Muslim husband, the evil and selfish rejected lover Hassan Mahjoub al-Hilali. When the fugitive wife Intisar thought of such possibility, she trembled with fear and felt resentment and disgust. She knew and understood that a lifelong association with that selfish husband would be a more painful humiliation than prostitution and slavery. She will be raped every day by a person she hates, and she holds him responsible for destroying her family, killing her sister Firdos, and causing the suicidal death of her brother Osman. And the main reason behind her separation from the only person she loves in her life. Seeing all the doors of hope close on her face, the sad innocent girl Intisar finally reaches the inevitable alternative. Suicide became the only available solution to her endless misery and suffering. Therefore, the 17-year-old fugitive and homeless girl who was legally wanted by the verdict of obedience decided to end her life. She found the river's waters surrounding her everywhere. She got to her feet and walked towards the edge of the boat. She knows there is no one nearby to save her if she calls for help. Then she reached the edge of the boat and climbed on it. Intisar stood hesitating for a while and then jumped out of the boat. She expected that her body would sink into the water. As she expected, she would struggle for a while and then die. She knows she cannot swim because she had never learned to swim in her city. This is because Muslim girls are not allowed to practice any kinds of sports or learn swimming. However, Intisar was surprised by the fact that the boat had now reached the other muddy bank. Instead of drowning and ending it all, she hid her feet in the muddy water and sank to her ankles. Intisar quickly stood up. She found that the muddy water could only reach her lower than her knees. She has a chance to return to the river bank and save herself. Yet she remained determined and blinded by her fateful decision of suicide. She once again chose to die rather than continuing living in her miserable condition. She started walking into the water towards the depths. This side of the river bank is deserted and devoid of any human beings, just like the wilderness of the cemetery of Aulad Sherfi near the brothel of the Bim lady Nafisa, where she spent her night sleeping on the top of the grave of her late sister Firdos. Intisar knows that only God will witness her suicide. She remembered her creator for the first time since she escaping out of her city at Gadarif. She said to herself, isn't God the one who gave the Sharia court judge the authority to issue the verdict of obedience against her, a supposedly disobedient Muslim wife? Is it not God who allowed their older brother Umar, their guardian, to sell them as two slave wives in halal Islamic marriages? He sold her along with her innocent sister, Firdos, as sex slave to the two evil conspirators, Osman al-Tayyib and Hassan Mahjoub al-Hilali. Wasn't God the one who allowed the policeman to kidnap her underage younger sister Firdos from her home and take her to the evil old man Osman al-Tayyib, who imprisoned her, beat her, and raped her to death. Accordingly, the third innocent girl in Sarf held God responsible for the kidnapping, rape, and murder of her late innocent sister Firdos, the suicide of her brother Osman, her separation from her lover Sami, her bitter experience of roaming without shelter, money, or shoes in the streets of Khartoum city, the two houses in which she was subjected to brutal rape, and her suicidal death today as well. As a result of that reasoning and the deduction, Intisar became very angry with God. She challenged him to dare stop her from killing herself and ending her misery and suffering. With these bold words that came out of her mouth and the strong suicidal thoughts inside her mind, the homeless and fleeing girl Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Javid reached the end of her life. Then, with eyes blinded by so many tears, a bleeding heart, and a troubled mind, she plunged deeper and deeper into the water. With each step she took further into the depths, the water, like a hungry giant, began to swallow her tender body. Her pure soul slowly began to rise from her holy body. Each step forward took her farther and farther from the land of the living and brought her closer and closer to the land of the dead. When only her neck and head remained above the surface of the water, Intisar stopped walking. Her heart is beating fast. Her mind has stopped working. Her end has come. Water covered every part of her body except for the head. Only one step separates her between the living and the dead. Then she raised her right leg and was about to bring it forward. At that critical moment in her life, Intisar suddenly began to hear a loud ringing of bells. Her right leg was suspended for some time. Her soul is now hanging between heaven and earth. The stillness of the water echoed the ringing of bells and made them very loud. At first, Intisar saw that bells were ringing in the sky above her. Angels ring the bells of heaven and welcome the advent of her spirit. She raised her face to the sky and looked. She saw a clear sky illuminated by the bright rays of the morning sun. She didn't see anyone there sitting on his throne in heaven. There is neither God nor angel in the sky except the flying birds sending down their excrement and feces. The bells keep ringing. The sound of the bells is her last anchor of hope. She put her right leg back and continued to listen to the bells ringing. Confusion left her mind. She started to think properly. The ringing of bells entered a flash of light in her darkened mind and created a ray of hope in her troubled heart. The flood of tears stopped. She felt as if a heavenly hand was reached out from above, holding onto her and preventing her from committing suicide. At that critical moment of losing everything in her life and not finding hope, Intisar began to think about the source of the ringing bells. She jumped back and turned her body. Then she started walking toward the riverbank. The more she walks, the louder, clearer, and closer the resonance of the bells becomes. One half of her body became visible above the surface of the water. The fleeing Muslim wife discovered the source of the ringing of the bells. To her unbelievable and unpleasant surprise, it came from a church, a Christian church. She could clearly see a huge cross on top of that church. The Muslim girl in Tusar turned into a statue. She is now in a fixed state. She found herself facing a difficult dilemma. It is even more difficult than the two previous bewilderments she faced at the gate of the military base and the house of slavery of the cruel wife, Mrs. Sanosny. In the first case, the dilemma forced her to choose between the angry mob's stones and the bullets of the two soldiers. In the second dilemma, she was forced to choose between servitude of slavery in the major's house and life of prostitution on the street of Khartoum. In both cases, she chose the lesser of the two evils. Now the choice is between suicide or going to church. There are two choices. She doesn't love either. She would either continue to follow the sound of the bells ringing and go to a Christian church or retain deep water and bury her body underneath. The runaway Muslim wife who became a homeless girl on the streets of Khartoum city would have chosen anything at that difficult moment but a church. This is where she was taught at home and school that a Muslim girl from childhood must hate with undividable heart. She is supposed to hate this place of worship of misguided Christian infidels bitterly. She never passed a Christian church in her city, Gadarif, without spitting on it 7 times on its walls. Even when she was passing near the cemetery or graves of Christians, she used to curse their dead. She was told in her Islamic community that the Jewish are a race cursed by God Allah and the Christians are misguided people. As infidels and enemies of God, they are both brothers of, of the monkeys and pigs. So how can she go now to where the church of the Christian infidels is? And if the biggest mosque of the Muslim in her country could not solve her problem on Friday, then how can the infidel church bring a solution to her inextractable today on Sunday? These are the two puzzling questions that prevented the Muslim girl Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir from moving forward. She has to choose between God and Satan, Islamic faith and Christian disbelief, Muslims and Christians, and Islam and Christianity. Her heart chose to remain faithful to her true Islamic religion, but nevertheless, her mind told her to go to that Christian church and ask for help. In fact, Intisar is like a droning young woman grasping at a straw if it can save her life. Eventually, with her tragic heart, darkened mind, and bleeding consciousness, the Muslim girl decided to take on the ultimate challenge and enter the Christian church. With heavy legs and bare feet, she resumed her walk towards the temple of the infidels. Intisar does not have the same feeling of confidence she had felt when she walked towards the Grand Mosque last Friday afternoon. Only her body moved forward, but her mind and heart remained rooted in that spot on the riverbank. And yet, she feels again in the depths of her soul that she is not walking aimlessly, but towards a goal stretched out and as clear as the bright sun of Sunday morning. She knew it is the day of worship for the Christian infidels. She got out of the water onto the muddy riverbank. She was barefoot and bleeding profusely from stones cut and thorns stabbed. Her dress and underwear are wet and full of mud and dirt. Her hair is ruffled and wet too. Her nose is still a smell of fish and mud. Her face is still swelling from the harsh slaps of the cruel wife of the major who attempted to rape her. Miserable she is. She looks as frightened and miserable. Even beggars may not like to approach her. She looks like a lunatic young woman who escaped from her cell in a mental hospital. Nevertheless, Intisar still appears like a lotus flower, which has preserved her beauty and dignity and whiteness. Although she lived for a while in those morally bad houses. Therefore, in her miserable condition, the Muslim girl decided to go to the place of Christian worship. The runaway arrived at the door of the church with mixed whims and emotions. Her mind was filled with strong feelings of contradiction and ambivalence. Her heart is controlled by an ambivalent state. She hates with passion the place she came to for help and shelter, and loves the ringing of the bells that prevented her from committing suicide. Despite this, the fugitive Muslim girl inside knew understood that in her current painful situation, even if the devil stood in front of her with his horns and offered help, she would accept it from his hands. She paused for a while before entering the empty church complex. She can she cannot see any person anywhere. Now the bells stopped ringing and silence filled the church. Intisar hesitated. She, she should either go further inside the church or call Satan, who deceived her and brought her to this infidel place of worship and then left her and went away. Something in the depths of her soul forced her to move on. But where should she go next? Suddenly, she began to hear many people singing. Intisar wondered if she had come to a place of worship or a wedding hall. She turned her head to where the choir singing was coming from her to her ears. At last, she saw a large, spacious hall. She walked towards it. When she reached the entrance, she saw many people standing in rows with books in their hands. Then the homeless Muslim girl Intisar climbed over the steps and entered the prayer sanctuary and sat quietly in the last seat of the pews. She felt like a thief who came to the wrong place to steal, or a burglar who broke into a demon haunted old castle inhabited by scary ghosts. No one saw her except the man standing in front on a platform. The man's face was neither angry nor surprised when he saw her. He looked at her and then turned his face to his congregation. The Muslim girl Intisar expected that the priest of the church would be an old man with a long beard and black clothes. He holds in his left hand a big red book called the Injil of Isa and walks through the streets with a gloomy and sad face. But the man she sees now is different from the image of the priest she stored in her memory. Many times she saw a church priest in her city of Gadarif with these descriptions. This man is wearing a plain dress. Nothing sets him apart from the rest of the infidel worshippers. Intisar's attention turned from the priest to the Christian. She saw them as men and women and their children. She wondered how teenage girls and other beautiful women were allowed to enter the infidels' place of worship and stand shoulder to shoulder with men. How can a man focus on worship when a girl or a young woman is standing next to him? The Muslim girl remembered that the guard of the Grand Mosque, the old man in Khartoum city, told her that the Prophet Muhammad, may God bless him and grant him peace, had categorically forbade women from entering the mosque. Moreover, she studied in the school's Islamic education class that her prophet also said that the presence of women invalidates the man's prayer. Accordingly, how can these infidels allow their females to stand with them in the same hall? shoulder to shoulder, and claim that they will worship the holy God. Before she can find an answer to her question, she gets distracted when she sees a group of teenage boys and girls who came to the pulpit and started singing. The silence again turned into the singing of chorus. Everyone sings. Intisar could not follow the lyrics at first. She's very tired and starving. After singing some hymns, the priest delivered his sermon and the service ended. Although he spoke in Arabic, the Muslim girl could not understand a single word of it, as if he spoke in Latin. Then the Christians started leaving the prayer sanctuary. Some of them looked at her and smiled at her. The majority of them walked by her without even looking at her or speaking to her. No one approached her or shook her hand. Intisar felt like a dirty piece of clothing that had fallen from a passing garbage truck. Then she compared her dirty and tattered dress to their beautiful clothes. She concluded that they view her as a dirty Muslim girl who should not be supposed or touched, should not be approached or touched or allowed to enter their holy sanctuary, or an outcast Hindu girl in the Hindu society. Then she was forced to compare these infidel Christians on the Sunday of their day of worship to the faithful Muslim men whom she had seen coming out of the great mosque last Friday afternoon. None of them showed pity or cared to help her when the Imam's bodyguards pushed her until she fell to the ground and hit her face and exposed her buttocks and underwear. Although many of them had heard her conversation with their virtuous Imam, none of them offered to help her with a few coins or take her to his house and introduce her to his wife and daughters and give her shelter and food. If anyone had done that, she would not have fallen prey to that evil beam lady who is called the Mother Nafisa, or became a lowly slave and raped in the house of the lustful military major. Intisar understood that the only wise words that the despicable Mother Nafisa had taught her was that all religious people are hypocrites, whether they are Muslims, Christians, or Jewish. These imams, priests, and rabbis love to preach to people, but do nothing to help them. So the homeless Muslim girl concluded that she didn't learn her lesson properly, which is why she once again reached the wrong place of worship and the wrong worshippers of God. Frustrated and very disappointed, a so-called disobedient Muslim wife gathered her strength, rose to her feet, and began to walk out of the church prayer hall. Once again, the diabolical sword of the society took possession of her mind. However, as she came out of the entrance door, the homeless Muslim girl saw someone running after her and saying in a loud voice, "Please, miss, don't go until you meet me." She saw the priest, and with a big smile on his face, he is approaching her. He extended his right hand to shake hands and say hello to her. She gave him her dirty hand. The priest shook her hand and very gently while holding her dirty hand with both his hands. The Jewish Muslim girl saw a woman, a girl, and a boy with the priest. Chapter 53. The fugitive Muslim wife finds refuge in a Christian home. As soon as she shook her hand, the priest began to introduce himself and his family to the new Muslim female visitor of their Christian church. And Pastor Matta Hanna, the religious leader, says politely, "What is your name, my dear daughter?" My name is Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, the unexpected visitor, Gail says quietly. This is my wife, Sarah Hanna. Hello, my dear daughter, Intisar, says the wife. Thank you, madam. This is my daughter, Suzanne, and this is my son, Naji. Intisar shook hands with the son and daughter of the priest. Suzanne is a girl about her age. Naji is 22 years old. The Muslim girl felt that Pastor Matta and his family were happy to meet her. Oh, my beloved daughter Intisar, welcome to our home, says Mrs. Matta. Yes, we invite you to lunch at our house, says Reverend Matta. The homeless Muslim girl didn't say anything but gave a faint smile and downward looked. Yes, Papa. She agreed to the invitation to have lunch at our house today, the Coptic daughter says happily. My daughter Suzanne, please take your sister Intisar to the car. Your mother Sarah and I will follow in a few minutes. As they walked toward the family's car, the Muslim girl looked carefully at the Christian girl. She saw her as a beautiful Coptic girl. Her eyes are green and her hair is blonde, as if she is a white girl from Europe. She's wearing blue jeans and a white shirt. Intisar was impressed by her beauty, but she did not like her clothes. The Muslim girl does not like a girl to dress like a boy. She believes that the shirt and pants and trousers are made for men, not women. She never put on man clothes except on the day of her nocturnal escape. Salah persuaded her to dress as a boy in order to fool Hassan's serious spices and make a safe escape. Suzanne is shorter than Intisar. Despite her dirty rags on her soiled body, the Muslim girl compared her beauty to that of the Christian girl and found herself much prettier. But Intisar finds that Suzanne has a happy, smiling face, which she lacks. More than that, nothing in the Christian girl might make the Muslim girl feel inferior to her new sister. When they got to the car, Naji started the engine. The beautiful Coptic girl asked the beautiful Arab girl to enter first. Then Suzanne walked in and sat down next to her. The Muslim girl was surprised by this friendly nature of the Christian girl. She had expected that the Coptic girl would avoid sitting near her because of her dirty, wet, and smelly clothes. Her clothes smell worse than sewage. Intisar herself felt stinking with a mixture of fish, dirty mud, and sweat. After a few minutes, Reverend Matta and his wife Sarah came and occupied the two seats in the middle. Intisar and Suzanne are sitting in the back seats. Naji drives the family car. As the car left the church and started running along Nile Street, Intisar looked out into the river and envisioned herself in the deep water, a dead body gone forever. Her tears fell like raindrops from her beautiful eyes into her smooth cheeks. She asked herself why she must suffer so much, though she did not commit any crime except that she fell in love with a rich boy and wanted him to be her marital companion in her journey in life. Why is the world full of evil, selfish, and dangerous people? She knows she cannot answer her question. She also understood that no one could answer this question except her Creator. He, the one who revealed these Islamic laws at the hand of his infallible Prophet Muhammad and committed them to about 2 billion Muslims today. While the car was still racing with other cars along the river bank, Intisar asked herself again how long the priest and his family would keep her in their home. She expected them to only hold her for an hour or two and then tell her to go back to where she came from. She tried to look at her future after those hours in the Christian home, but she predicted a dangerous future with uncertainty and lack of hope, and she wonders if she should share her tragic life story with these Christians. How can she trust the infidels? She was made to believe from childhood that the Jewish and Christian are infidels and enemies of God and his prophet Muhammad and hate Islam and Muslims. Therefore, she concluded that she cannot trust infidel people who hate her religion and Muslim people. Then the Muslim girl turns her attention to the Coptic boy Naji for the first time. She remembered the image of his face when she saw him in the church. He is young, handsome, and happy. He has that smiling face which seems to be a common feature of the Coptic family. Intisar wondered if he had a girlfriend or not. Then she remembered her handsome boyfriend. What would have happened to her lover Sami if she committed suicide? Intisar expected sadness to fill his heart when he knew her tragic and sad end. This Sunday will be a dark day for him. He may kill himself like Romeo killed himself when he learned that his beloved Juliet killed herself, or he may become a mad lover like Case, who became madman when he could not marry his beloved girl of his life dreams, Layla. Will he build a great shrine for her, as the beautiful Sudanese girl Tajud has a shrine of love in Kassala city, which lovers visit up to this day? Or will he build a dome for her like the Taj Mahal palace shrine that was ordered by Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan to house the tomb of his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal? Or he may live the rest of his sad life with a broken heart over losing the only girl he loves in his life. Intisar knows that her lover Sami is still in prison. He went to jail because of his unwavering love for her. The same wicked religious man who claimed to be a just judge caused her late sister to be kidnapped, raped, and murdered, imprisoned her lover, and banished her from her home and city. Because of him and because of the evil old man's gang, she became a homeless, fugitive, beggar, whore, maid servant, sex slave, and helpless girl who fell victim to two attempted rapes by two evil men in the city of Khartoum and even attempted suicide. At the end of her flight and vagrancy, she was forced to enter a place of worship for the infidels and seek help in a Christian home. Had it not been for her desperate situation, she would not have entered the church of infidel Christians, even if she had been forced to starve to death in the streets of the Triangle, capital city of Sudan. She knows that any other Muslim girl in her place would choose to become a prostitute in a brothel house, or a slave in a house of slavery, or a starve in the streets and die like a stray dog rather than go to a Christian church and a Coptic home. Anyway, after a long drive, the car stopped in front of a large gate. Someone, likely the valet, has opened the gate and the car entered. It is also a beautiful house filled with many flowers, roses, and other plants of different colors. When she went down and followed the Christian family inside, the Muslim girl found their house very beautiful. She compared it to the brothel of the procuring of Nafisa and the place of residence of the Major Sanosni and his cruel wife. It is more beautiful than the first house, but less beautiful than the second home. Then the Coptic girl took the new girl to her room. Suzanne's room is very clean. It is decorated with many beautiful drawings and pictures hanging on the wall. The friendly Christian girl says happily to her Muslim guest, "Welcome, Intisar, to my humble little room. Please sit back, relax, and feel at home." "Thank you, Suzanne," Intisar says in a low, sad voice. Then she adds, "You are a very nice girl, Suzanne, but I feel I will make your clean room dirty if I sit on a chair or the bed. Better for me to sit on the floor." When the homeless Muslim girl said those words, she went and sat down on a green carpet near a large armchair. Immediately, the Christian girl Suzanne ran towards her and hugged her tightly. A few tears fell from her beautiful eyes. Then she spoke a few words and almost cried. Suzanne says, "It is impossible, dear Intisar. You cannot sit like this. I know you are going through a difficult time, but all of us humans sometimes go through hard times in our lives. Now I don't want to bother you with that." Then Suzanne grabbed Intisar's left hand and helped her to stand on her feet and assisted her to sit on the armchair. "Now tell me, my dear sister, would you rather have lunch or take shower first?" "I haven't eaten any food in 2 days," Intisar says in a weeping voice. Tears started falling from her beautiful eyes. Suzanne also wiped a few tears from her lovely eyes before speaking. First she sat in another armchair near her guest and hugged her tightly. Then she spoke while crying. "Intisar, you are a very young and beautiful girl. Life shouldn't treat a girl of your age so harshly. Please come and lie on my bed. I'll bring you enough delicious food for you to eat." When Suzanne had spoken these kind words, she took her new sister's hand and led her to her bed. After that, the Christian girl left her room and went to get something for her Muslim guest to eat. Until now, Intisar felt that she had been treated kindly by the loving Coptic family. However, her doubts rose again in her mind, which made her ask herself what would happen to her next. Will she be asked to leave the house once she is fed? Or will she be allowed to stay and then at night one of the males, either the father or a son, will try to rape her? Before she could find an answer to her troubling questions, the Coptic girl returned. Suzanne had brought a large tray of food in her hand. She put the tray on a table and invited her new guest to eat. The homeless girl in Tisar was like a hungry dog who starved for 2 days. Therefore, she immediately attacked the food and started satiating her hunger and filling her empty stomach. Suzanne pretended to be busy tidying up her room. She intentionally does not want to look at Intisar as she eats with both hands. The good Coptic girl Suzanne is not as rude as the jealous girl Muna, who told the new girl Intisar in the brothel she had eaten like a jungle girl in the woods. When she looked at the dishes and found that they were completely empty, the Christian girl left her room and soon returned with a second helping for the hungry Muslim girl. This time, Suzanne brought almost twice as much food as before. Intisar also completely finished the second assist, and when she saw Suzanne want to leave the room to get a third help, she stopped her. "Please don't bring me any more food. I'm completely full now." "Don't be shy, my dear sister Intisar. We usually cook more food on Sunday in case we have some visitors from church or other relatives who live far away from our homes, our house. No, thank you, Suzanne. I'm completely satisfied now. Can I have a cup of tea? Yes, of course, you can have that. I have the same habit. I drink tea after every meal. Once Suzanne went out to get tea, Intisar's vision became sharp again because of the delicious meal and the large amount of fresh food she had just eaten. Then she looked at the beautiful pictures hanging on the wall in front of her. Most are scenic landscapes of rural locations, but one that caught her attention was of some of the men who were sitting around a large table. It is the painting of the Last Supper of Christ and his 12 disciples by Leonardo da Vinci. But the Muslim girl did not see or know about it before. In the center, she saw an important religious leader seated with his followers and a halo of light circling around his head. Intizar has have correctly guessed that the man is the Prophet Isa al-Masih ibn Maryam, or Jesus, son of the Virgin Mary. Then the Muslim girl and wonder as why the Christians worship Jesus, why they worship a man instead of God. Before the Muslim girl could continue the chain of her thoughts, the Christian girl entered with a large cup of tea in her hand. The runaway wife drank the tea in silence while the Coptic girl was busy looking into her school books. When the visitor finished drinking her cup of tea, she looked at her hostess and said, "Can I take a break now?" Suzanne asked nicely and politely, "If you would like to take a shower first and change your clothes before you take a rest." "Yes, I would love to take a shower. Please follow me." Then Suzanne took Intisar to the bathroom and gave her some of her clothes and told her to put them on after showering. After that, she returned to her Coptic family and found them waiting for her eagerly. "Did she tell you anything about herself?" Mrs. Hannah asked. "She didn't say much to me except that she hadn't eaten food for the last 2 days," says Suzanne. "Did she at least tell you why she hasn't eaten for so long?" asked Pastor Hannah. "I think we should not bother her with any questions and wait for her to reveal her identity and her problem on her own and in due time," Suzanne says. "At least we should try to find out what kind of problem she's facing." "Papa, why don't we wait until she feels at home and then tell us her problem?" says the Coptic daughter impatiently to her daddy. "My concern is that I don't want to be involved in any problem related to the Islamic law," says Reverend Hannah. "I don't think she's involved in anything illegal except as a common problem for teenage girls nowadays. Either she became pregnant with an illegitimate child before marriage, or her parents wanted to force her to marry a rich old man who had other wives and many children. This is what prompted her to flee her home and her family," says Mrs. Hannah. "Yes, Mama, it is a common problem among Muslim girls," says the son, Naji. Pastor Hannah says, "If that is the case, we will try to help her. But I don't think her problem is that simple. Otherwise, why did she come to the Christian church?" Naji says again, "Guys, if a Muslim girl enters our Christian church, it means that she's in very serious trouble." Pastor Hannah says, "I think my son Naji is right. Papa, shouts Suzanne angrily at her father. Remember the story of the Good Samaritan told by the Lord Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. How did he help the wounded Jew on the road, even though the Jewish considered the Samaritan and his people infidels and they are sworn enemies? But Hannah says to his daughter, of course I love helping her, even though she's a Muslim girl. The mother says, we Christians don't consider Muslims our enemies, although they look at us in this way. Then let us wait and not rush to hasty conclusion, says Suzanne and adds, since the Lord has brought her to us in the church and our home, we must help her, regardless of whether her problem is serious or not. It is not a hasty decision that we must approach the situation very carefully. You all know that if the neighbors see a Muslim girl in our house, they will conclude that we want to convert her to our religion. According to the law of this Muslim country, converting from Islam to Christianity is apostasy and serious crime and is punishable by death, says Reverend Hannah. We will not convert her to Christianity. We should try to help her because the Lord Jesus Christ has brought her to his church, says Mrs. Hannah. Yes, Mama is right, the daughter says happily. While the members of the Christian family were discussing her case, the fugitive disobedient Muslim wife Intisar came out of the bathroom and entered the room of the kind Christian girl, Suzanne. Then the Coptic daughter got up and went to her room. When she saw her in her dress, she opened her eyes and said, oh, Intisar, you are so beautiful, just like a superstar of the Indian cinema. Thank you, Suzanne. And you are also beautiful as an Egyptian female actress. Thank you, my dear. But still, I'm not as beautiful as you. I now feel like I have stripped off my dirty clothes and cleaned my filthy body from so many days of dirt. So I guess I'm becoming human again. Now, my dear sister Intisar, would you like to take a break before you meet my parents and brother? Or you don't mind talking to them right away because they're eager to know more about you? The heart of the so-called disobedient Muslim wife who fled from the verdict of obedience and the justice of the Islamic Sharia court was once again filled with fear, panic, and depression. But somehow she hid her negative feelings in her heart and said quietly, the bath refreshed me. I can talk to them now. Excellent. Please follow me to the guest room. The runaway and homeless Muslim girl walks behind the good Coptic girl with a heart full of fear. She fears that the Christian family will send her out of their home once they find out about her problem with the law. When they reached the living room, Intisar found out that the family members were busy whispering to each other, and when they saw her, they fell silent. Yet their smiling faces encouraged her. Then Pastor Hannah asked the Muslim girl to sit down and feel comfortable. Reverend Hannah continues, we are so glad to have you in our home today, my beloved daughter Intisar. Also, you are invited to visit our church every Sunday, whenever you want to do so. My house is open to anyone who wants some help. So we want to know how we can help you. I'm a Muslim girl. I'm a stranger in this city. The fugitive wife begins to speak in a sad voice while she's weeping. I'm homeless, without money or relatives. I'm from Gadaref city. I ran away from home because the police wanted to take me by force to live with a man I hated. The judge of the Sharia court issued an obedience verdict against me. This means that you are a married woman already. Am I right, my daughter Intisar? Pastor Hannah asked. I'm not married yet. I have a boyfriend. I love him so much, and he loves me too. He was falsely accused of breaking the law and imprisoned for 1 month in Gadaref city. Well, please, my dear daughter Intisar, feel at ease and tell us your whole story, says Mrs. Hannah. The Coptic daughter says to her new sister, no matter how difficult your problem is, dear Intisar, we may still try to help you. Then Suzanne added, we will not allow you to starve and suffer again. The alleged disobedient Muslim wife, straying from justice, felt encouraged by the words of the kind Coptic mother and her loving Christian daughter, and therefore she recounted her love story from the time she met her lover Sami in the cinema in Gadaref city until she attempted suicide 2 hours ago in the Nile River. She said the ringing bells of the Christian church, which at the last minute stopped her from killing herself. The eyes of the Muslim girl were filled with a torrent of tears, and her voice choked several times as she told the story of her bitter tragedy. In the meantime, the Coptic girl Suzanne was sitting near her, and from time to time she gave her water to drink and gave her a handkerchief to wipe her tears. She also hugged the Muslim girl many times until she stopped crying. Each loving family member shed hot tears as the runaway girl tells her tragic story. I believe in every word you said, my beloved daughter Intisar, says Reverend Hannah. Indeed, your tears reveal more offense and suffering than your mouth spoke. I also believe that God saved you from those evil people who tried to rape you or turn you into a prostitute and a slave girl. Moreover, the good Lord has saved you from your suicidal days and has taken you into his church and brought you to his house here. That is why neither I, as the servant of the living Lord, nor anyone here in this house have the right to put you back on the streets. From now on, consider our home your home, and the Church of Christ your second home. My daughter Suzanne is your sister, and my son Naji is your brother. Consider me your real father, and my wife Sarah your real mother. After Reverend Hannah uttered these tender words, the fleeing Muslim girl began to shed indescribable tears of joy. Immediately, the Christian girl Suzanne embraced her new Muslim sister Intisar, where her beautiful eyes also wept tears of joy constantly. Chapter 54. The new gang leader continues to implement the second evil plot. There is no day in all the days of his evil life when the devil incarnate, Mr. Osman al-Taib, was so angry and his corrupt heart worried more than the day he was denied bail from prison. He proposed a bail of 20 billion Sudanese pounds, but his request was rejected. Prison authorities told him he would never be released from pre-trial detention until his trial was over. On the same day, the authority informed him that he would be transferred to Khartoum City for interrogation by the police, accusing him of his involvement in the murder of his first wife, Firdaus Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. In addition, his lawyer told him that the last session of the trial of the first innocent girl, Mona Salahuddin Hashim, is scheduled to take place in 2 weeks. For this reason, his transfer to the capital city was postponed until the relevant trial was completed. His lawyer expected that his anticipated verdict in the first trial of the first innocent Gail Muna, who was kidnapped and raped at the age of 16 by the monstrous gang of Al-Wish, would be lighter compared to his expected sentence in the killing of his first wife, the second innocent girl, the late Firdaus Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, who was 15 years old when he allegedly kidnapped and raped her to death. Another factor that contributed to disturbing the heart and mind of the evil old man was the flight of the alleged disobedient Muslim wife Intisar, the third innocent girl, who was 17 years old when she fled from the verdict of obedience of the Sharia court. On the same day, the leader of his spies, the dangerous man Tia Ibn Kuku with the Shaitan, and the two criminals, Jigir and Nasser, returned from the precise searches that lasted for 1 month for the fugitive Muslim wife Intisar in the cities of Khartoum, Wad Madani, Kassala, New Halfa, Bor Sudan, and their environs. They told him that all their efforts were in vain, as if the earth was open and swallowed her. The last coincidence, which also contributed to the increasing anger in the wicked heart of the rapist and murderer of the innocent girl Firdaus, Mr. Osman al-Taib, was the release of the two friends, Sami and Salah, from prison on the same day. And to quell his anger and take revenge on his enemies, the evil old man summoned his eldest son Mustafa Osman al-Taib, the so-called legal husband of the fugitive and rebel wife Hassan Mahjoub al-Hilali, the greatest by Mr. Tia Kuku, with the Shaitan and his other two Zaks, for a quick decision to be made. So that day, Satan, the leader of demons, sat with his chief of spies and his other evil men in his hospital room and began to discuss the serious matter. I don't care how you are going to do it, the angry old man shouted, while his contemptible mouth is foaming like an angry camel. You have to dig up the earth and take out that dirty peach into Sarah and hand her over to her lawful husband Hassan. I hold all of you guys responsible for her escape. The only way to find her will be through Sami and Salah, says his eldest son Mustafa. Chief Tia says that my spies Jigir and Nisir are still standing there in front of their lair watching them. I no longer trust you and your men. Didn't that damning poor whore Intisar get out of her house in front of you and your spies? My dear father, says Mustafa, please give him another chance. I know Mr. T is a trustworthy man. He has done many spy jobs for me before and he did them well. I'll give him one last chance, only if he can provide us with more capable criminal men to work with him. Spy T says, this of course I can do. He quickly added that I hear that Mr. Abu Shakur Wad Al Kalb had recently been released from prison. I know he specializes in this kind of spying work. This is an excellent idea. Go to this Abu Shakur and add him to your spices, Mustafa says. No, sir. Mr. Abu Shakur is the son of a dog. He's not too smart to work under another ringleader or an employer. He's a dangerous gang leader himself and likes to do his work with his dangerous men. It's up to you. Let him start his spying business today. It's up to you. Let him start his spying business today. Hey, listen, all of you here, before you leave, The evil old man says, I would rather like you divide the job between you, Mr. Tia, as the grand spy, and that gang leader, Mr. Abu Shakhura. I know that my son Sami and his friend Salah have brains because they are university graduates and not illiterate like you guys. Therefore, they will try to oversmart you and deceive you again. Each spy team Each spy team must deal with one of them. This is an excellent idea. It will make work easier for us. I will deal with Sami and give Salah to Abu Shakhura. Excellent plan. Chief Tia. Now this is what you should do if you find that evil bitch Intisar. I want you to deliver her to her legal Muslim husband Hassan Bajub al-Hilali at the African Hotel in Kassala City. Why should the groom, Hassan, spend his honeymoon with his disobedient bride Intisar in that hotel with pleasure, my father? The son asked. That is the hotel where I spent my honeymoon with my 13-year-old bride, Russia. What a great time I had with that hot, beautiful, and sexy underage girl. Then the dirty old man, the pedophile, who loves to have sex with children, began to weep when he remembered his honeymoon with his former child bride, the late underage girl, Russia. My father, says Mustafa impatiently, can you please forget your previous honeymoon with your late child bride, Russia, and tell us what we have to do after we arrest the fugitive disobedient wife Intisar, the spouse of this gentleman husband, Hassan. Hey Hassan, get ready and act like a man. Once that rebellious girl has been brought to you, do your job as an old husband do with their wives on their honeymoon. After all, no husband will ever be convicted or imprisoned for raping his wives if she refused to give him what Allah allows him to have, said the evil old man. Mustafa says, Hassan is not a little boy. As the groom, he knows what to do if his bride Intisar when she is brought to him in his room. Don't worry, Uncle Osman, I will not disappoint you. I will have sex with her, even if I have to rape her. You are a great man, my dear son Hassan, says Iblis, the leader of the second gang of demons. Now, Mr. Tia, hurry up. Bring Mr. Abu Shakhura and resume your spy work, Mustafa says. In less than an hour, the grand spy Abu Shakhura with the Kalib and his dangerous men will be in their watchtower, said the leader of the fairest gang of spies. Wait a minute, my brave comrade, said the evil old man anxiously. I have something very important that I would like to add to our flawless plan. I prefer that the groom Hassan not be alone in his hotel room with his disobedient bride Intisar. He must have someone with him in case that filthy bitch resists him or she might try to kill him as her evil sister did to me twice during our honeymoon at the five-star Hilton International Hotel in Khartoum City. But father, says Mustafa worriedly, that no man in the whole world will agree to the presence of another man in his hotel room during their honeymoon. Why shouldn't Hassan do that? A man was with me in my hotel room while I was trying to have sex with my first legal bride Firdos. If I hadn't done that, I would have been dead and gone to my grave forever by the time now. Twice she tried to kill me, but my huge bodyguard Harun saved me from her evil twice. He was hiding under my bed, and whenever he felt that she was killing me, he would jump out from under the bed and hit her in her head with his big stick. But father, who in the whole world would agree to do this lewd act for another man? Let us ignore the question of ethics. The rapist and murderer of the old man says, for my own safety, I'm ready to do the impossible, even if the accursed Satan, the devil, offer his hand to protect my life. I would gladly hire him. Well, Father, tell me, who can handle such a task? I mean to say, what decent man would agree to watch a husband and a wife naked and having sex like dogs do in the street? This is worse than watching porn movie on the internet. Son, give me a minute. Then the old man became thoughtful. Each pair of eyes stared at his evil brain. Suddenly he blew a whistle and smiled happily as if he had discovered a new planet or won the American lottery visa. He shouted like Archimedes, I found it, I found it, I found it. I know who's a good kicker at this kind of job. He's the only man who can agree to do this immoral act because he worships Oman. Fattah Karrar, your father's secretary. But Uncle Osman interrupts Hassan secretly. It is very dangerous to allow Mr. Fattah Karrar to take a full look at the sexy naked body of my legal bride Intisar. As you know, he is a notorious womanizer. He might try to rape her before me. Are you not a man and you have a big dick and a masculine power? But still he might try to rape her while I am asleep. Just tell him if he tries to do anything like that to your lawful wife Intisar, the mighty man Osman al-Tayyib, the richest man in this city, will send his dangerous men and order them to cut off his cock from his unclean body and burn it with fire and thus deprive him of his weapon of war against the woman he worships more than he worships his God Allah. Great idea, father. I think it will keep Fattah and his dick under control, said Mustafa lovingly. Now, my good fellows, go and put my followless plan to work. And I pray to Almighty God and ask His Holy Prophet Muhammad to be with you all. And they send their mighty angels to protect you, grant you success, and help you against your adulterous enemies. Amen. Lord of the worlds, say the three criminals in unison. Meanwhile, Sami and Salah were released from prison at noon on the same day. They both spent a full month in Gaddarif prison. From prison, the two friends went straight to the house of the lawyer Salah's family. Their main concern is knowing the safety of Intisar. They asked the family if she had called them on the phone in their absence and told them about her hiding place. Salah's mother said that Intisar phoned several times while they were locked up in prison. She said further that Intisar told her that she lives with a Coptic family in Khartoum city, but she did not give her any phone number or any address to write a letter to her. However, she promised to call again after Salah and Sami were released. The two friends became very happy when they learned that Intisar had found shelter and a family to take care of her, even though she had not enough money or any relatives or friends in that big cosmopolitan city of Sudan. The next thing that two friends have to do is visit Salah's second beloved girlfriend Mona at her home. The friends realized that they are being followed by some spies since they left the prison. Since they know that the fairest innocent girl Mona will not be targeted by their enemies, they decide to take a risk and visit her and tell her the good news about the safety of her beloved friend Intisar and their release from prison. In the meantime, The newly appointed gang leader Abu Shakhura and three of his Zaks arrived at Salah's house less than an hour after the time they were recruited. Two of them crossed the road and stopped near the house. Not far from them, the leader of the first gang, Tia, and his two spies, Gigir and Nisir, are sitting in a small restaurant and watching the house in question. The leader of the new gang, Abu Shakhura, and his three men were given the descriptions of Sami, Salah, and Intisar, yet they did not see any of them. Mustafa told Abu Shakhura that Intisar, the wanted wife, is a young and beautiful girl of 17 years of age. The only way to reach her is through Sami and Salah. Most likely, these two bad friends, when they are released from prison, will go to meet her at her hideout. So the two spy teams are following the two friends, Salah and Sami, and watching them very carefully. Before we continue our narration of this interesting and painful account of the three innocent Muslim girls, Intisar, Firdaus, and Muna, who were subjected to gross injustice, severe violence, and abhorrent persecution as a result of the hostile and misogynistic teachings of Islam, we need to say a word or two about the newly appointed gang leader, Mr. Abu Shakhur Del Kalib. Is a tall, big, strong, and very dangerous criminal. His lips, nose, ears, mouth, head, arms, hands, and legs are also large. The only small things about his massive body are his red eyes. His lips collapse when he speaks. He snores with his flat nose while he's wide awake during the day, which is why his gang comrades nickname him Abu Shakhura, or the father of snoring. His last name, Wad al Kalib, or dog friendliness, have a long story behind him. He is an illegitimate son without a known father. However, there is a rumor in which all his relatives, neighbors, and evil companions believe that his real biological father is not a human but a dog. According to this widely believed rumor, when his biological mother, Kaltumaya, was just a 14-year-old teenage girl, she was attacked and raped by a large stray dog. Those who claim to have seen her when she was raped by this huge stray brute say that the raped girl and the dog that fucked her in the street and in the broad daylight remained glued together through the dog's swollen cock inside the abused girl's pussy long after the rape. In other words, her genitals and the dog's penis remain attached to each other until the brute's swollen cock became its normal size, and thus the raped girl's pussy was able to get rid of it. Another version of this rare rape incident says that this attachment and adhesion continued between the two despite people hitting the, the scabious dog until its swollen penis returned to its normal size and released the raped girl's female genitalia. Despite that release, the stray dog ejaculated his semen into her womb and made her pregnant with a half-human, half-dog creature. This strange creature is Abu Shakhur Del Kalib. It is difficult to know whether this story is true or not, but many people believe in it, even Abu Shakhura himself and the police authority. This strong belief arose from the fact that the half-human, half-animal creature has a dog-like face and a mouth. In addition, his mother does not know to this day who the biological father of her only son is. Nowadays, his mother works as a prostitute in a brothel and bar, a seller of local liquor and drugs dealer, and a thief in the same den as her own drunkenness. In the near future, we'll meet his biological mother, Kaltumaya, as we tell our story. Abu Shahura, like his mother, is a sexual predator and practices all kinds of sexual perversion, such as rape, sodomy, sexual abuse of children, and often engages in bestiality with animals such as dogs, goats, ewes, sheep, chickens, pigeons, and sometimes with cows, donkeys, mules, camels, in addition to having intercourse with the corpses of dead girls and young women, or having necrophilia, necrophiliac sex. In fact, his last imprisonment occurred because he was accused of exhuming from the grave a beautiful 15-year-old teenage girl of a wealthy Arab family and raping her dead corpse. The girl died by committing suicide, drinking poison, because she became pregnant outside the legal Islamic marriage with what is called what haram, or an illegitimate child. Police investigations found that her Sudanese Arab mother forced her to drink poison when she discovered the lover of her daughter, Al-Ja'aliya, Al-Hurra, from the tribe of Ja'aliya, is one of the so-called black African Sudanese who was originally from a tribe in Darfur region in western Sudan. The Arab girl became pregnant out of the marriage bond as a result of practicing adultery with an African lover who is the son of the neighbors. The racist mother preferred to kill her Arab daughter rather than marry her African lover, whom she calls a nigger or a Zungi slave, was black like a raven. However, neither the Gadari police nor the police prosecutor in the criminal court were able to provide tangible evidence to prove the abhorrent sexual act of Abu Shahura, who committed necrophilia with the dead body of the exhumed Arab girl who committed suicide, whom he took out of her grave in the middle of the night, committed adultery with her, and abused her, the sanctity of her pregnant body, until early morning. He was acquitted of that charge of prohibited and abhorrent sex in all parts of the world. At any rate, on that very day, the so-called Ibn al-Kalib, Abu Shahura, was the fairest of the spies to see the two friends who had been released from prison leaving Salah's house. He also saw them when they stopped a taxi and got in it. The taxi left immediately, so Abu Shahura had no time to wait for the other thugs. He started his car and sped after Salah and Sam's taxi. The other two spies waited for another taxi and went behind the car of their ringleader. Abu Shahura al-Kalib, Chief Tia, and his two spies are the last to follow behind the three cars. They are very upset about their car situation. They ask their taxi driver to overtake the other two cars of their rival spies. After 10 minutes of a crazy car race, the taxi driver of Tia was able to put his car between Abu Shahura's car and the taxi of his two legs. The dog's alleged son will not allow Tia and his spies to walk in the front of his car. Both Tia, the son of Kuku the Shaitan, knew of this and then accepted his half victory. After another 20 minutes of crazy driving, the car race ended when Sami and Salah stopped their taxi and got off in front of the house of the fairest innocent girl Muna. They are well aware of the many spy cars following them. Despite this knowledge, they are not interested in them. They know that these spies are looking for the so-called disobedient Muslim wife Intisar, who is legally required to devour her through the policemen to the house of obedience to her alleged Muslim husband Hassan, according to the verdict of obedience issued a month ago by the judge of the Sharia court, which is against Intisar, not Muna. With such confidence in their hearts, the two friends got out of their taxi, crossed the road, stood in front of the outer door, and proceeded to ring the bell. Meanwhile, the two groups of spies spread out outside the house as if they were policemen about to attack a dangerous criminal's hiding place. Abu Shahura followed his previous method by sending two of his men to stand near the house while he and another spy sat inside their private car. Mr. T and his two spies crossed the road and entered a nearby restaurant. They know that four new spy rivals are privileged because they have their own car. After a few minutes, the beautiful beloved girlfriend Mona came out and embraced her handsome boyfriend Salah while she was smiling and crying at the same time, and her two eyes shed tears of joy. She is very happy to know about the release of her dear lover from unfair imprisonment. She also shook hands with his friend Sami and congratulated him on his release. Abu Shakur's small red eyes opened wide and his big yellow teeth moved with an ugly smile like Gitcher when he saw Muna. She perfectly fulfilled the description of the rebellious wife on the run Intisar. She is young, beautiful, and a teenager. She looks exactly 17 years old, like the age of Intisar. As a matter of fact, the fairest innocent girl Muna was 16 years old when she was kidnapped and raped by the gang of the devil incarnate Al-Wish, Al-Lajabu, while the second innocent girl Firdos was 15 years old when she was beaten and raped to death by the old man Osman At-Tayyib, who is another devil in human form. Therefore, the new gang leader jumped to the hasty conclusion that Muna is Intisar. Accordingly, the last step came for him. At the hideout of the wanted disobedient Muslim wife was discovered very quickly. Before he could discuss the matter with his men, he saw the girl who was supposed to be Intisar following Salah al-Sami and enter with them into the restaurant where the old ringleader and his two men were sitting and watching them. Both Tia, the son of Kuku, and his sons Jigir and Nisir realized that the intense rivalry they have with their rival spices. They are very eager to get their hands on the fugitive wife Intisar before the other spices catch her. Moreover, they have another privilege that Abu Shahura and his men do not enjoy, as they have seen the wanted wife Intisar face to face in the Sharia court, and therefore do not need anyone to describe her to them. Then the new leader, Abu Shahura, waved his hand to his other two men and invited them to join him in his car. Dosa and Doka quickly cut the road with the distinction of two professional hijackers. They moved quickly as if they were two bats flying at full speed in the dark night. Then they got themselves into their leader's private car through the back seat doors. Abu Shahura's criminal mind has already worked out a plan to kidnap the beautiful girl. His only concern is not to allow Tia and his men to get their hands on the wanted bride before them. He learned that the wealthy son Mustafa and his imprisoned rich father Osman At-Tayyib have promised a huge sum of money to the group that first finds the rebellious Muslim bride and successfully deliver her to her legal groom in the African hotel in Kassala City. Listen, boys, Abu Shahura says in a hoarse voice like a ghoul or an ogre. The bears brought us to the nest very quickly. While he's talking, his lips clap and his nose snorts as if he's asleep. The wanted beautiful dove has been found. Most likely she will not fly with the two male birds, but will return to her nest and hide again. Tia, the bastard son of the infamous murderer Kuku, the firstborn of the devil who was sentenced to life in a Gadari prison, and his two deadly spices, rat and eagle, should not catch her in front of us. I'm sure they wouldn't dare touch her while she was at the restaurant with her two male companions and in the presence of several strangers. I will move the private car and keep it near the dove's nest. When she comes out, you have to jump on her from behind, close her mouth, her small mouth quickly, and carry her in the car. Don't allow her to scream. I want a fast and flawless job, but something needs to be done before the dove appears. Doka, you are good with a slingshot. I want you to break and put out all those street lamps near the dove's nest. This area should be completely darkened. I don't want any police interference or other people's attention. Is this plan clear? It is a crystal clear plan, our great chief, said the three criminals in unison. Doka, move quickly and do what I told you to do. Okay. Our pause. The aforementioned ugly black man Doka jumped out of the seat of the back seat and crossed the door road. Within a few minutes, he made the area as dark as his heart and color. Then he returned to the private car and obtained the approval of his leader. Well done, Doka, Abu Shakur says while snoring his big nose loudly. Now I'll tell each one of you what to do. Dosa will handle the driving, and Doka Borma will come from behind and snatch the dove. You both have to be nice to her. No brained hands or broken legs. The beautiful sparrow looks very tender and delicate. Never touch her neck. You guys have rough hands and would break her neck if you touch her. I will not forgive either of you if such a fatal accident were to happen to her. I will send him to his grave before her family buries her murdered body. So you too, Borma and Doka, should be very careful while abducting the sweet bird. When the lovely bird is in the nest of this car, I'll put a large cloth of a turban over her mouth and tie her legs and hands with a strong rope. Dosa will drive the car towards the highway. We'll go to the city of Kassala, and we must arrive tonight at the African Hotel. This is where the rebellious Muslim bride will spend her first honeymoon night with her Muslim groom, as he must fuck her in her virgin pussy and rob her virginity. And then she will submit to him and be an obedient Muslim wife and allow him to fuck her day and night, and she will never run away from him again. Once we hit the highway, I will switch seats with Dosa and then fly to our final destination. Our car should land in Kassala City in less than usual time. Is this blank clear, guys? Yes, oh, our great boss, said the three Zaks in unison. Then Abu Shakhura took a U-turn and stopped the private car near the house of the first innocent girl, Muna. Half an hour later, Salah and Muna left the restaurant holding hands, followed by Sami. The good citizens crossed the road and started walking slowly toward Muna's house. After a few minutes, Salah and Sami stopped a taxi, shook hands with the first innocent girl, said goodbye, and left. The fairest innocent girl Mona stood for a few minutes waving at them. A few minutes later, she saw another taxi speeding behind her friend's taxi. She was not surprised to see it because Salah and Sami told her that some spies have been following them since their release and departure from prison today. Chapter 55. A kidnapped bride taken to her groom for their honeymoon. As soon as the taxi of Habib Intisar and her Habiba disappeared from her side, the fairest innocent girl Mona turned towards her house and began walking slowly back to her outer door. Her mind is occupied with many thoughts, and her heart is filled with a mixture of ambivalent feelings of happiness and anxiety. She was surprised when her eyes saw the completely dark area in front of her house. She can see lights everywhere except near where she lives. She became reluctant to enter the dark area. She can see no one except for a beautiful Mercedes car parked near her house. She wondered why the car she didn't see before was there when she left her house, and why there was no light, because when she came out there was a light in front of her house. For a few minutes, the horrific memories of her previous abduction and vicious rape by Al-Wahsh gang flashed like a powerful earthquake or the molten lava of an erupting volcano in her frightened mind. As a result of this terror, she asked herself, is there anyone in that car waiting to attack and kidnap her? Her lover told her that the spies don't care about her, but they are looking for the so-called runaway rebellious Muslim wife Intisar. Moreover, if there is any such possibility, Salah and Sami would not take such a risk and come to her house and bring spices to kidnap her. So the fairest innocent girl, Mona, encouraged herself with these positive thoughts and entered the dark zone. In the meantime, the eldest son Mustafa will come as his usual daily habit since his father Osman al-Taib was transferred from the haunted barracks number 13 in prison to the hospital in his private ward to visit him at 1 a.m. in the afternoon and leave at 9 p.m. in the evening. On that day, while leaving the hospital, the son of the evil old man received a phone call on his mobile phone from the new gang leader, Abu Shakhura Wad al-Kalib. Hello, Mr. Mustafa. Who's this? I'm Mr. Abu Shakhura, the new grand spy. Yes, Mr. Abu Shakhura, Mustafa says calmly. Please wait, sir. The eldest son continued to speak very calmly. I can't talk to you here. Leave the line open. Do not break the line. Mustafa then rushed to the toilet and began to inquire about the new criminal leader. What is your problem, Mr. Abu Shakhura? What kind of Bijan are you talking about? Which girl? Intisar? Where did you find her? Are you sure she is the runaway wife of Hassan Mahjoub al-Hilali? Bravo, Mr. Abu Shakhura. This is a quick and excellent work. You have proven that you are better than Mr. Tia and his men. Listen, man, you have to take her to the African Hotel in Kassala City tonight. Her groom Hassan and I will get there before you. Book the hotel and meet you later with the kidnapped bride. Give me an hour. I'll go to the house of the handsome groom Hassan and drive him immediately to Kassala City for the honeymoon with beautiful bride Intisar. You should start your travel in an hour. This is an excellent job. Finding the runaway bride quickly will pay you lots of money for it. Listen, Mr. Abu Shakhura, there should be no police interference. Also, no harm should be done to the kidnapped girl. Now it is 9:20 p.m., so I want to see you with the bride Intisar in Kassala city in 4 hours. Goodbye and see you there. Mustafa has to call the new leader 3 times to postpone his trip to Kassala city due to unnecessary delays caused by Hassan and his father's secretary, Mr. Fattah. At 1:40 in the middle of the night, Intisar's so-called legal husband was finally ready to make his trip to Kassala city to spend his honeymoon with his kidnapped bride. By 2:10 p.m., by 2:10 a.m., Hassan, Mustafa, and the man of wonders Fattah Karar left the food huts on the Gadarif highway and headed towards Kassala. Mustafa drives his own brand new car while the groom Hassan sits next to him in the front seat. Wonder Man Fattah was wedged in the back seat between two large suitcases. Once the car was out of town at a speed of 120 kilometers per hour, the merry trio decided to celebrate their victory. Celebration in the form of drinking alcohol and singing in the car. Fattah is the cupbearer and lead singer. He began pouring and distributing the liquor they had bought at a cheap illegal secret bar on their way out of town at the Tuawa Mountain refugee camp. After half an hour of crazy driving, the party started with some glitchy songs. Wonder Man's maniacal obsession with women is fueled by his drinking, and he begins to make up some dirty jokes. In his jokes, he suggested sharing the kidnapped bride's virgin pussy between the three. Hassan and Mustafa scolded him for suggesting such an immoral idea. The eldest son of the imprisoned old man then began to encourage the groom Hassan with many words about how he should act when he is with his rebellious bride Intisar. He must be harsh and violent with her. He tells him that he has to break her arrogance and take revenge on her for abandoning him and going for a rich boy. The Wonder Man also told the groom that the only way to make a woman respect him was to have sex with her against her wishes. Mustafa agreed with Fattah. Then the rich son of the old man took the example of his third wife, Aziza. Mustafa said that she had been in love with her lover for many years before and therefore refused to marry him. Her father forced her to marry him because her lover is from a poor family and he is the son of the richest man in the city. On the first night of their wedding, his legal Muslim bride, Aziza, told him that she would kill him and kill herself if he dared to have sex with her virgin pussy and rob her virginity against her wish. The rich oldest son of the wealthy business tycoon Sayyid Osman al-Taib related as a lawful Muslim groom how he struggled with his Nash's third wife, Muslim wife, who was his only disobedient bride for 3 nights until he finally broke her pride and arrogance and forced her to submit to him and fuck her and violently rob her virginity. To him from that day until today, she became submissive Muslim wife. When Mustafa finished recounting his adventure with his third wife, the man of wonders, Fattah Karar, said he remembered his late womanizer father telling him that all women can be classified into 3 categories: the goat-like woman, the horse-like woman, or the mare, and the wolf-like woman. The god woman is submissive, and therefore it is easy to have sex with her from the first wedding night. The bride horse is rebellious and needs 3 or 4 days to tame her before the groom can enjoy sex with her. During those days, she will kick and bite and do many other acts of violence to keep her bridegroom away from her body. The male bride resists her groom and shows such tough resistance because she is in love with another man and therefore believes that her lover is the only one who has the right to have sex with her virgin pussy and take away her virginity. Mustafa's third Muslim wife is a good example of a horse bride. Even Hassan's bride, the fugitive wife Intisar, falls into this category of disobedient woman. She rebelled against her legal husband Hassan and ran away from him because she loved the rich and handsome son Sami. However, the werewolf-like bride is extremely difficult to deal with. She starts out like a good woman or a meek lamb, but soon turns into a rambunctious mare or a more accurately a lioness woman. She is like a witch bitch who can shapeshift into a werewolf woman into the crescent completes 14 nights and becomes a full moon. The problem of the wolf woman is that she has a very strong and unbridled sexual desire. One man never satisfies her. That is why she is always looking for more sex outside the marriage bond. Once she seduces one man, she no longer enjoys sex with him and looks for another guy to fuck her with his big dick in her untamed pussy. In the end, either her husband kills her in an ordered killing or she runs away from home and ends up in a brothel. When she becomes a prostitute, she turns into a whore who has become a common property for sale to all men. Then she gets complete sexual satisfaction when she gets fucked by more than 20 men daily. In this slutty way, she settles because she gets what she wants. She is not ready to settle down with one man as an obedient wife because she wants to be a woman to many men. In fact, she is like a she-male or a tomboy, which is why she likes to have sex with many men every day. We stupid men go to her brothel and fuck her and her big pussy and pay her beam to have sex with her. We give her as much fucking as she wants and also pay her money to try to satisfy her insatiable lust. But she is supposed to pay us money to give her enough sexual gratification and make her happy. None of us foolish men who come to her in the slaughterhouse will ask why the hooker gets paid to fuck her and why she doesn't pay the man who fucks her. Sex is a common interest and benefit for both sexual partners. During sex in bed, both the male and the female get sexual pleasure. When the man's cock semen flies into the woman's pussy and she's in turn gets an orgasm. If both of them get sexual pleasure and satisfaction, why one base and the financial reward for his sex partner? Even the Holy Quran says that the adulterous man and the adulterous woman must each be flogged with 100 lashes, and let no beating be taken for them. This punishment of Allah is based on the fact that both adulterers get same pleasure from immoral sexual intercourse. For this reason, both the chief adulterer, Mr. Mahjoub al-Hilali, who is now in prison in a jail in the city of Khartoum, and the pretty adulterous woman, Mrs. Raja Shukrallah, the wife of the soldier Abbas, will be stoned to death for committing adultery together, while both of them have another spouse, and another life partner. This is why I believe that women are demons that God created for us, meant to make us fall into the sin of adultery and punishes us for it. But we men, as male demons, love to fuck those beautiful female goblins. See how Hassan goes crazy after the Briti, Jinni and Tasar, and Sami disobeyed his father and sent him behind bars because of the same beautiful Ifrit girl. One, the notorious womanizer, the man of wonders, expressed his low opinion of women. The other two drunks laughed until tears fell from their red eyes, and their dirty slavia ran from their contemptible mouths. The driver Mustafa nearly drives his new mini car under a big truck, but in a split second, he manages to avoid the imminent fatal crash. If his small vehicle had driven under that big truck, the three evil men would have celebrating their joint honeymoon in hell instead of in a hotel. Anyway, the rich eldest son's private car arrived at the African hotel in Kassala City at 5:30 a.m. By then, the three evil conspirators had become drunk. Of the three, Hassan is the most drunk. Wherefore, Mustafa and Fatah had to drag him from the car to the reception hall. So they have to carry his liquor-drenched body and stretch it out onto the sofa. As soon as they let go of his hands and legs, the alleged groom of the fugitive bride Intisar fell to the ground like a trash of rotten meat dumped inside a garbage container. His mouth began to throw up some of the large quantity of liquor he consumed on the highway. The dirty, dead drunk man even beat inside his clothes. Therefore, his filthy body was reeking a foul odor of alcohol, sweat, urine, and vomit. After that, Mustafa reserved a large room for the groom, Hassan, his bodyguard, Fatah, and the kidnapped bride, Intisar, and he booked a small room for himself. With the help of Fatah and two hotel workers, the so-called groom of the alleged disobedient bride was taken to his room. Then the notorious womanizer Fatah hid inside the bathroom. After that, Mustafa returned to the hotel lobby to wait for the new spy leader Abu Shakhura and his three men to bring the beautiful kidnapped bride Intisar to her drunken groom Hassan to consummate his marriage with her. The Muslim husband was ordered by the despicable old man Osman al-Tayyib that by hook or by crook he must insert his large cock into the circumcised virgin pussy of his disobedient Muslim wife, break her hymen, and fly his semen into her womb and make her pregnant with his fairest child. Therefore, the conspirators believe that the legal Muslim husband Hassan, when he had sex with Intisar, the rebellious wife, will break her resistance, remove her rebellion, erase her arrogancy, and make her always a submissive Muslim wife to him. Then the husband and wife could have sons and daughters and live together happily ever after. The new leader of the spies, Abu Shakhur al-Kalib, on the orders of the eldest son Hassan, and the eldest son Mustafa, left with his men the city of Gadarif at 3:10 in the morning. His car never stopped on the highway. He is driving crazy fast. In order to stay awake, he preferred to smoke bango, which is a kind of Sudanese marijuana. From the time the car left Mount Tuawa, he and the other four, all the other three Zaks lit their bango cigarettes, and everyone smokes. In less than half an hour of driving, the eyes of the four criminals turned red and became very small due to the massive amount of strong Sudanese marijuana they had inhaled. Their heads are filled with images of fantasy of sexy young women. Therefore, they started singing, laughing, and screaming the whole way. Each spy began to sing his favorite vulgar song. All four Zaks are singing their songs differently and in dirty language and at the same time hearing each other. And the special car flies along the highway at a mad speed. Abu Shakur, the son of a dog, was able to reach the city of Kassala in less than 3 hours. This crazy speed might have been a record if he had not been under the influence of drugs. Anyway, at 5:25 a.m., the new gang leader stopped to be checked by the Kassala Highway Police. The scan usually won't take more than a few minutes. Oftentimes, the policemen don't even bother to get out of their office, especially when it is such an early hour in the morning. They will just wave their hands for the car to move forward. In most cases, the police fall asleep when the car leaves the highway and enters the city street. In addition, most policemen do not know what to check for. They will come up and look at the driver's face and tell him to go ahead. That morning, the policeman came out of his office and walked slowly towards the car. When he reached the vehicle, he switched on the bright light of his battery flashlight and focused it on the driver's face. He saw nothing to draw his attention to the driver. In fact, he regretted coming out of his office and seeing such an ugly face, which would be a sign of bad omen for his new day. Wherefore, he raised his right hand as he was about to wave the car to move forward. But suddenly a strange thought entered his sleepy head, and he fell to it. How could such an ugly-looking black man drive such an expensive private car? He would be content with any explanation if among the other three men he could see any rich man. The other three ugly faces confirmed his suspicions that the car might be a stolen vehicle. He saw very clearly that it was written in big letters on their frightened-looking faces that they were frauds and criminals. Therefore, the policeman leaned forward and asked the driver for his driver's license and vehicle registration papers. Abu Shakur pretended to look in his pocket for his license. Then the policeman discovered the car's papers pinned to a panel on the outside. He focused the light of his flashlight on them and read what was written in them. He understood that the car belonged to a man named Ismail Abdul Muhsin Shakir, a resident of Madani city. Then he asked the driver to get out of the car and prove his identity. But the chief criminal Abu Shakur remained sitting inside the car. The policeman shouted loudly at him and ordered him to quickly get out of the car. The new gang leader knew that if he didn't act quickly, the other policemen would come out of their office with their weapons and stop him from escaping. So he raised his right hand, which was holding a jack-o' lantern and looked like a cricket bat, and brought it down with all his might on the policeman's face. The blow is so strong that the policeman was literally airlifted, flew for some time, and landed 2 meters from the car. Even if he was slapped by a rampaging lion with his hand, his body would not fly through the air and fall that far. Immediately, the driver took his foot off the brakes, put it on the accelerator pedal, and pressed it hard. The engine roared before the car exited the Kassala police inspection office like a surface-to-earth surface missile and headed toward the city. When the other policemen saw what happened to their colleague, they ran out of their office with their guns ready to fire. Unfortunately, by then the stolen car was out of their reach and line of fire. Instead of shooting the air and squandering the ammunition, they ran towards their fellow policeman who was assaulted by the perpetrator and fell to the ground, dead or unconscious. Two of them took his body back to their office. The third policeman picked up the phone and summoned the Al-Gash River Bridge police and informed them of the violating vehicle. While Kubrilgash River policeman was receiving the details of the terrible incident, he saw Abu Shakur's car pass in his office at the speed of light. He left the phone receiver and ran out to intercept the offending car. He too was too late, and yet he jumped on his motorbike and followed behind the fleeing car. Two other policemen came after him and got into their car and followed behind. At that early hour, the streets of Kassala city were empty of any traffic. The two cars and the motorbike are flying at crazy speed. If any creature, whether human or animal, happens to go out in the streets, the stolen motorcycle and other police car will crash into him or it at the same time. Fortunately, no such fatal accident occurred. The cops are very angry and every one of them has decided to either kill the criminal culprits or kill himself, but he will not allow any chance to escape. The policeman on the motorcycle arrived just in time and saw the offending vehicle as it exited the main street and headed in the direction of the main market. When he reached the end of the narrow lane, he could no longer see the car. Keep driving fast on the empty road. He hears his colleague's car, other police car coming up behind him at the speed of light. He knows that if he doesn't quickly move his motorbike out of the way, the other police car will crash into it and kill him horribly. So he got out of the way quickly and then hit the brake at the same time. His motorcycle spun in circles 4 times before tossing him into the air and dropping him upside down 10 meters away. He felt lucky enough to escape being killed by friendly fire shooting of the other two cops' car. The tires of the speeding police car passed a few centimeters near in front of his slumped body like a ground-to-ground fire missile and stopped about 2 blocks away from him. The two policemen then jumped out of their car and lunged at their fallen colleague. Instead of helping him to his feet, one of them shouted at him angrily, "Where is the bastard driver? The dumb son of shame. He ran away from me, sir." The third policeman said angrily, "You mean to tell me that the ground opened and swallowed him with his car and those with him? Honorable officer, Janabu, I think the car and those in it will be hiding somewhere in this area. What about the big hotel?" The third policeman asked. "Yes, I think." The second policeman said, "That is the only place anyone who could think of going at this early hour of the morning." After that, the 3 angry policemen decided to walk to Hotel Africa. The famous Africa Hotel is a 5-minute walk from where they left their car and motorbike. As soon as they entered the lane leading to the hotel, they saw the fleeing car and 2 men carrying a folded prayer rock from outside it. The other two men got out of the car and followed behind. The three policemen immediately ran towards them and ordered them to turn themselves in. The four men refused to give up and rushed inside the hotel. When the policemen reached the entrance of the hotel, they saw another man joining the four fleeing men. They are running at full speed up the stairs leading to the upper floor. "Stop there!" one of the three policemen shouted. "Surrender and raise your hands." As he shouted these threatening words, he was pointing his gun at the five fleeing men. The other two policemen also pointed their guns at them. Mustafa is the first to stop and turned around. He raised his hands and looked behind him. Abu Shahura is at the other end of the group. He knew he had zero chance of escaping, so he put his hands on his head and confronted the armed policeman. The other three criminals also turned themselves in. The folded carpet or a small mat fell out of their hands and rolled by itself. The five criminals were then ordered to walk to one corner and told to get on their knees and keep their hands on their heads. "Each of you should turn towards the wall and put your hands on your head. Any more movement and I will shoot you in the head." "Policeman Taha, go and open the folded prayer rack. Be careful when opening it." Then the policeman Taha walked over to the folded small prayer mat and touched it with his trembling hands. Then he said with stuttering words, "There was a dead corpse inside. Open it and remove the murdered body from it." With a heart full of terror and his hesitating stance and trembling hands, the cop Taha untied the rope. All eyes opened wide to see the dead corpse. There are only two reception girls and one security guard in the hotel lobby. The hotel guard has a stick or he has a stick on his hand in his hand and has no firearm because he's not allowed to have a gun. The three employees are afraid of being accidentally shot and killed by the angry cops. They watch with horror in their hearts the heinous crime that has been discovered in their hotel. Then the policeman Taha slowly and fearfully began to remove the dead body. First came the legs, then the stomach and hands. Finally, the face of a beautiful young girl appeared. Her eyes are wide open. Her mouth is fretted with a large turban. "She's not dead. She's alive," shouted the policeman Taha. A second police officer told him that they probably kidnapped her to be raped by someone in this hotel. "Remove the turban from her face and mouth and let the kidnapped girl speak for herself," shouted the police chief in charge, known as Sergeant Isa Musa. As soon as the policeman opened the long turban from the mouth for her mouth, the first innocent girl Muna exploded in a very loud scream, which woke all the hotel guests and also brought many neighbors to the lobby. Her screams are stronger and more violent than the screams of the teenage girl Shaza, who saw Intisar lying on the grave of her late sister Firdos and thought that she was a zombie or a goblin standing among the dead. Muna was forced by the four spies who kidnapped her to hide her screams all night long as a result of the long turban that was wrapped around her mouth, face, head, and hair and held her screams for help. Even the evil Al-Wahsh gang members who kidnapped and raped her before did not hold back her voice and lock herself up in such an inhuman and deadly way that almost took her life. It was nothing but a divine miracle that managed to keep her alive and all the way from Gaddarif city to Kassala city. In less than 10 minutes, the vast hall of the hotel lobby was filled with many people among the guests and neighbors. With great difficulty, three policemen managed to calm the terrified kidnapped girl and reassure her that she was safe and that she had nothing to fear and she's in safe hands. On the morning of that day, the criminals, the four spices, and the eldest son Mustafa of the imprisoned snake, Shaitan al-Tayyib, who ordered his new gang to kidnap and rape the disobedient and fleeing wife, the third innocent girl Intisar, were arrested and taken to police custody in Kassala city for further interrogation. The first innocent girl, Muna, was taken to the police headquarters. After taking her statement, she was sent to her city Al-Gaddarif by police car. In the car with her, three policewomen armed to the teeth and one policeman guarded her. The man is the driver of the police van. Yet Hassan, the alleged husband of the so-called disobedient Muslim wife Intisar and selfish rejected lover and cowardly man, escaped mass arrest. Even his bodyguard, who was supposed to protect him from being killed by his alleged disobedient wife, bride, on their first wedding night, the man of wonders, Fattah Karrar, also escaped from being arrested and dragged to police custody. Their heavy consumption of alcohol during the night causes them to hibernate like winter broods until midday on the following day. When they get over the influence of the local liquor they consume on the highway, they are baffled by the mysterious disappearance of Mustafa and the unnecessary delay of the four kidnappers of the British bride Intisar. They do not know what happened to their fellow criminals until they return to Gaddarif city after 24 hours of waiting at the African hotel. With a sad face, the evil old man told them that the Kassala prison police department had contacted him through phone and informed him that his son Mustafa had been arrested at the African hotel on charges of kidnapping an innocent girl by the name of Muna Salahuddin Hashim. They said his apprehended son has given them his cell phone number and requested them to contact his wealthy father and inform him about the serious charge that has been laid upon him. According to the charge, Mustafa Osman al-Tayyib hired a notorious criminal named Abu Shakhura Wad al-Kalib and ordered him to kidnap a beautiful girl named Muna Salahuddin Hashim from the city of Gaddarif and bring her to him at the African hotel in Kassala city. According to the police investigations, she is the same innocent girl who was kidnapped by Al-Wahsh and his 5 men and brutally gang raped by all of them. The police reports stated that the rich man Mustafa had deceived Abu Shakhura and his 3 gangsters by falsely claiming that the girl was his legal Muslim bride. She absconded with her secret lover Sami on his first wedding night before he could consummate with her his halal Islamic marriage. When the old man finished recounting the serious accusation that had been brought against his eldest son Mustafa, he began to weep bitterly. Then he suddenly stopped crying and looked with a demonic face and indescribable rage. He roared like a wolf or a hyena or a fearsome ogre and said to Hassan, I will never accept defeat. I want you and the other 3 spices to dig up the earth and exhume up the damning bitch out of her grave. Because of that bad girl Intisar, I lost many of my dearest ones. My beloved son Mustafa and my 2 close friends, Haj Muhammad and Mr. Mahjoub al-Hilali, are all now behind bars because of her. I too was imprisoned in this fucking prison and filthy hospital room because of that boy whore and dirty bitch. However, I will never give up until I find her and make her life a living hell. Moreover, I will take revenge on my bad son Sami and his evil friend Salah. After the dangerous old man renewed his vow to take revenge on his evil son Sami, his cursed girlfriend Tisar, and his cunning friend, the recognized Sudanese lawyer Salah, he sent the so-called legal husband to the rebellious and fugitive wife. He gave him his full permission and blessings. Before sending him, he wrote a check for a large sum of money in his name and gave it to him. Then he ordered him to use the money to save for his disobedient wife, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. He sternly warned him in no uncertain terms that he should never show him face again without his lawful Muslim wife, Intisar, who must be pregnant with baby inside her womb.